Today is Wednesday, January 8th, 2025. I think this is my 25th entry. This pop screen came today. It's enormous. I did not expect it to be this loud. This large. Anyway, so I did not record the day before yesterday at all, although I did do a bit of reading practice in the morning. I am a teacher. I was on winter break. I went back on Monday, in-service day for prep and planning. The students came back on Tuesday. Monday I was just tired. And then last night, I actually did do a recording, and I deleted it. So I did get in a vocal exercise session last night, but I decided to download and start trying to figure out how to use Pro Tools Intro, which is the free version of Pro Tools. And I kind of hate the software. I feel like I am trying to learn how to ride a unicycle on skis. And it left me so frustrated. And I've watched YouTube videos with vocal cord coaches, oh my goodness, who say, don't record when you're upset or angry because it comes through in the reading. And I was like, rah, rah, rah. Oh, but yeah, it came through in the reading. It was not a good reading. I didn't feel good about it at all. I did it, but you could tell I was just doing it just to get it done. Ah. So I deleted that recording and decided not to post it. I don't think it was authentically reflective of my abilities. Maybe I should have. I mean, the point of this project is to document the process as real as it is. But, oh my God, Pro Tools. Oh. So I'm back on Adobe Audition tonight. And it's such a beautiful piece of software in comparison to Pro Tools in terms of its user interface and its design. I'm sure Pro Tools has a lot of bells and whistles. I am not a musical artist. I don't need them all. Pro Tools Intro doesn't have them all. It is just so much more complicated than I personally think a piece of software has any right to be, in terms of being able to use it, being able to find things and set things up. Okay, I'm going on a diatribe. That's not why I'm here tonight. I'm going to get myself all upset again. Letting it go. I have done all of my warm-up exercises up until now. So I did my deep diaphragm breathing. I did my neck and shoulder rolls. I did my facial massage and my gum chews. I did my fake yawning. I got 2 real yawns out of it. That was exciting. Yawning is exciting. I did my resonant humming, my basic lip trills, my 5-note scale up and down lip trills, my tongue trills. I did my tongue strengthening exercises. I did my ya-ya exercises. So we're picking up with the QEQRs. Then we're going to move through the tongue twisters. And then I'm going to attempt to read chapter 1 of The Man in the Brown Suit by Agatha Christie. And I'm going to try and do a better job tonight than I did last night. That is a pretty low bar to get over. It was pretty awful last night. All right. Anyway, so let's get into it. Oh, sorry. This is the by Fei C414, plugged into my Zoom H6 that I'm using as my audio interface. I've all but given up on the Focusrite Scarlett Solo. I really wanted it to work, but that's a story for another session. Anyway, I'm on my Zoom H6 Essential as an interface tonight. With brand new addition to my equipment, a $16 pop filter. It's a double layer pop filter. It's like just pantyhose, looks like. Pantyhose. We'll see what, if anything, that does to the audio. I'm recording in OBS, and I'm also recording it in Adobe Audition. I will use the reading portion of this to practice editing and post using Adobe Audition. All right, now, here we go. QEQR, 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 QEQR. That feels good enough. It is really cold where I live right now. I know everything's relative. There are places elsewhere in the United States where it is a lot colder tonight. But it is really cold where I am right now. And windy. Oh my goodness. All right. Moving into tongue twisters. Okay. To work on my D sounds. D, da, 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 D. Down the deep, damp, dark, dank den. Down the deep, dank, 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 dark, dank den. I'm trying to go too fast. Down the deep, dank, dark, dank den. Down the deep, dank, dark, dank den. Down the deep, dank, dark, dank den. How much dew could a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? How much dew could a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? How much dew could a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? How much dew could a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? I love drinking tea, but it definitely gives me the greps. All right. To work on my F sounds. F. Four furious friends fought for the phone. 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 To work on my J sounds. James just jostled Jean gently. 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 To work on my S sounds, I'm also going to be trying to practice my breathing and breath control. Moses supposes his toeses are roses, but Moses supposes erroneously, for nobody's toeses are posies of roses, as Moses supposes his toeses to be. Moses supposes his toeses are roses, as Moses supposes his... I got lost. Moses supposes his toeses are roses, but Moses supposes erroneously, for nobody's toeses are posies of roses, as Moses supposes his toeses to be. Moses supposes his toeses are roses, but Moses supposes erroneously, for nobody's toeses are posies of roses, as Moses supposes his toeses to be. One more time. Hold on, I'm not breathing right. I'm breathing high up in my shoulders. Moses supposes his toeses are roses, but Moses supposes erroneously, for nobody's toeses are posies of roses, as Moses supposes his toeses to be. Moses supposes his toeses are roses, but Moses supposes erroneously, for nobody's toeses are posies of roses, as Moses supposes his toeses to be. Whew, I was running out of air on that. Okay, to work on my R sounds. God, I still hate this tongue twister. If you must cross a course-cross cow across a crowded cow crossing, cross the cross-course cow across the crowded cow crossing carefully. If you must cross a course-cross cow across a crowded cow crossing, cross the cross-course cow across the crowded cow crossing carefully. If you must cross a course-cross cow across a crowded cow crossing, cross the cross-course cow across the crowded cow crossing carefully. Okay, I can't believe that I have said it that well that many times in a row. I'm not going to jinx it. We're going to move on. All right. And we're finishing up with one of my favorites. To improve differentiation between different sounding words. I'm going to take a couple of deep breaths here first. Betty bought a bit of butter, but the bit of butter Betty bought was bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter, but a bit of better butter will make my batter better, so Betty bought a better bit of butter. Betty bought a bit of butter, but the bit of butter Betty bought was bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter, but a bit of better butter will make my batter better, so Betty bought a better bit of butter. Betty bought a bit of butter, but the bit of butter Betty bought was bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter, but a bit of better butter will make my batter better, so Betty bought a better bit of butter. Betty bought a bit of butter, but the bit of butter Betty bought was bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter, but a bit of better butter will make my batter better, so Betty bought a better bit of butter. All right. Okay, and so we are moving into the reading. Last time I read the prologue. This time I'm going to read the first chapter. We'll see how successful I am. The man in the... I forgot what the title was. The Man in the Brown Suit by Agatha Christie. Chapter 1. Everybody has been at me, right and left, to write this story, from the great, represented by Lord Nasby, to the small, represented by our late maid-of-all-work, Emily, whom I saw when I was last in England. Law, miss, what a beautiful book it might make out of it. Law, miss, what a beautiful book you might make out of it, just like the pictures. I'll admit that I've certain qualifications for the task. I was mixed up in the affair from the very beginning. I was in the thick of it all through, and I was triumphantly in at the death. Very fortunately, too, the gaps that I cannot supply, from my own knowledge, are amply covered by Sir Eustace Pedler's diary, of which he has kindly begged me to make use of. So here goes. Anne Bedingfield starts to narrate her adventures. I'd always longed for adventures. You see, my life had such a dreadful sameness. My father, Professor Bedingfield, was one of England's greatest living authorities on primitive man. He really was a genius. Everybody admits that. His mind dwelt in Paleolithic times, and the inconvenience of life for him was that his body inhabited the modern world. Papa did not care for the modern man. Even Neolithic man he despised as mere herder of cattle, and he did not rise to enthusiasm until he reached the Mousterian period. Unfortunately, one cannot entirely dispense with modern men. One is forced to have some kind of truck with butchers and bakers, and milkmen and greengrocers. Therefore, Papa being immersed in the past, Mamma having died when I was a baby, it fell to me to undertake the practical side of living. Frankly, I hate Paleolithic man, be he Aurignacian, Mousterian, Chilean, or anything else, and though I typed and revised most of Papa's Neanderthal and his ancestors, Neanderthal men themselves fill me with loathing, and I always reflect what a fortunate circumstance it was that they became extinct in the remote ages. I do not know whether Papa guessed my feelings on the subject. Probably not, and in any case he would not have been interested. The opinion of other people never interested him in the slightest degree. I think it was really a sign of his greatness. In the same way, he lived quite detached from the necessities of daily life. He ate what was put before him in an exemplary fashion, but seemed mildly pained when the question of paying for it arose. We never seemed to have any money. His celebrity was not of the kind that brought in a cash return. Although he was a fellow of almost every important society, and had rows of letters after his name, the general public scarcely knew of his existence, and his long-learned books, though adding signally to the sum total of human knowledge, had no attraction for the masses. Only on one occasion did he leap into the public gaze. He had read a paper before some society on the subject of the youth of the chimpanzee. The young of the human race show some anthropoid features, whereas the young of the chimpanzee approach more nearly to the human than the adult chimpanzee does. That seems to show that whereas our ancestors were more simian than we are, the chimpanzees were of a higher type than the present species. In other words, the chimpanzee is a degenerate. That enterprising newspaper, the Daily Budget, being hard up for something spicy, immediately brought itself out with large headlines. "We are not descended from monkeys, but are monkeys descended from us? Eminent professor says chimpanzees are decadent humans." Shortly afterwards, a reporter called to see Papa, and endeavored to induce him to write a series of popular articles on the theory. I have seldom seen Papa so angry. He turned the reporter out of the house with a scant ceremony, much to my sorrow, as we were particularly short on money at the moment. In fact, for a moment I meditated running after the young man and informing him that my father had changed his mind and would send the articles in question. I could easily have written them myself, and the probabilities were that Papa would never have learnt of the transaction, not being a reader of the Daily Budget. However, I rejected this course as being too risky, so I merely put on my best hat and went sadly down to the village to interview our... So I merely put on my best hat and went sadly down to the village to interview our justly irate grocer. The reporter from the Daily Budget was the only young man who ever came to our house. There were times when I envied Emily, our little servant, who walked out whenever occasion offered with a large sailor to whom she was affianced. In between times, to keep her hand in, as she expressed it, she walked out with the greengrocer's young man and the chemist's assistant. I reflected sadly that I had no one to keep my hand in with. All Papa's friends were aged professors, usually with long beards. It is true that Professor Peterson once clasped me affectionately and said I had a neat little waist, and then tried to kiss me. The phrase alone dated him hopelessly. No self-respecting female has had a neat little waist since I was in my cradle. I yearned for adventure, for love, for romance, and I seemed condemned to an existence of drab utility. The village possessed a lending library full of tattered works of fiction, and I enjoyed perils and love-making at second hand. The village possessed a lending library. The village possessed a lending library full of tattered works of fiction, and I enjoyed perils and love-making at second hand, and went to sleep dreaming of stern, silent Rhodesians, and of strong men who always felled their opponent with a single blow. There was no one in the village who even looked as though they could fell an opponent with a single blow or several. There was the cinema, too, with a weekly episode of The Perils of Pamela. Pamela was a magnificent young woman. Nothing daunted her. She fell out of aeroplanes, adventured in submarines, climbed skyscrapers, and crept about in the underworld without turning a hair. She was not really clever. The master criminal of the underworld caught her each time, but as he seemed loath to knock her on the head in a simple way, and always doomed her to death in a sewer gas chamber or by some new and marvelous means, the hero was always able to rescue her at the beginning of the following week's episode. I used to come out with my head in a delirious whirl, and then I would get home and find a notice from the gas company threatening to cut us off if our outstanding account was not paid. And yet, though I did not suspect it, every moment was bringing adventure nearer to me. It is possible that there are many people in the world who have never heard of the finding of an antique skull at the Broken Hill Mine in northern Rhodesia. I came down one morning to find Papa excited to the point of apoplexy. He poured out the whole story to me. "You understand, Anne? There are undoubtedly certain resemblances to the Java skull, but superficial only. No, here we have what I have always maintained, the ancestral form of the Neanderthal race. You grant that the Gibraltar skull is the most primitive of the Neanderthal skulls found. Why? The cradle of the race was in Africa. They passed to Europe, not marmalade on kippers, Papa," I said hastily, arresting my parent's absent-minded hand. "Yes, you were saying?" "They passed to Europe on..." Here he broke down with a bad fit of choking, the result of an immoderate mouthful of kipper bones. "But we must start at once," he declared as he rose to his feet at the conclusion of the meal. "There is no time to be lost. We must be on the spot. There are doubtless incalculable finds to be found in the neighborhood. I shall be interested to note whether the implements are typical of the Mousterian period. There will be the remains of the primitive ox, I should say, but not those of the woolly rhinoceros. Yes, a little army will be starting soon. We must get ahead of them. You will write to Cook today, Anne." "What about money, Papa?" I hinted delicately. He turned a reproachful eye upon me. "Your point of view always depresses me, my child. We must not be sordid. No, in the cause of science one must not be sordid." "I feel Cook's might be sordid, Papa." Papa looked pained. "My dear Anne, you will pay them in ready money." "I haven't got any ready money." Papa looked thoroughly exasperated. My child, I really cannot be bothered with these vulgar money details. The bank, I had something from the manager yesterday, saying I had £27. That's your overdraft, I fancy." "Ah, I have it. Write to my publishers." I acquiesced doubtfully, Papa's books bringing in more glory than money. I liked the idea of going to Rhodesia immensely. "Stern, silent men," I murmured to myself in ecstasy. Then something in my parents' appearance struck me as unusual. "You have odd boots on, Papa," I said. "Take off the brown one and put on the other black one. And don't forget your muffler. It's a very cold day." In a few minutes, Papa stalked off, correctly booted and well mufflered. He returned late that evening, and, to my dismay, I saw his muffler and the overcoat was missing. "Dear me, Anne, you are quite right. I took them off to go into the cavern. One gets so dirty there." I nodded feelingly, remembering an occasion when Papa had returned literally plastered from head to foot with rich Pleistocene clay. Our principal reason for settling in Little Hampsley had been the neighborhood of Hampsley Cavern, a buried cave rich in deposits of the Aurignacian culture. We had a tiny museum in the village, and the curator and Papa spent most of their days messing about underground and bringing to light portions of woolly rhinoceros and cave bear. Papa coughed badly all the evening, and the following morning I saw he had a temperature and sent for the doctor. Poor Papa, he never had a chance. It was double pneumonia. He died 4 days later. That was Chapter 1 of The Man in the Brown Suit by Agatha Christie. Just pausing at the end to get a little noise floor recording to use in post-editing. All right, well, that was pretty messy. I just was stumbling over the words. I think I was probably reading really fast, too. I felt like I was reading really fast, and I felt like I was tensing up in my body and my shoulders. So, I don't know. It definitely went better than yesterday. I will tell you that much. All right, so journal entry number 25, I think. Done. 5 more and this project is over.